you have to keep learning. If you're not being really deliberate about your learning, about creating content, you're doing yourself a disservice. I create content because it helps reinforce the things I learn. It helps me share with other people so that they know that I'm a resource that they can trust.
Welcome to the Grant Owen Podcast, where we explore the world of entrepreneurship. Join us as we dive into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to start, grow, and scale a successful business. We're on a mission to share our experiences, failures, insights, and advice with others. Whether you're just starting out in your entrepreneurial journey or you're looking to take your business to the next level, tune in and join the conversation about what it takes to succeed in the world of business.
We going full throttle.
Welcome to the Grant Owen Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, I love it when people like, share, and subscribe. That's always, that's super helpful for me. All the ratings, super helpful. But what's most important to me is that you share this with one person. This conversation is going to be really insightful and really interesting for a lot of people. And when you listen to this, especially in the business world, especially if you're in the data analytics world, or if you're in that place where you are an entrepreneur with an entrepreneurial spirit, but you've been working in corporate life for a long time, I'm thinking this conversation is going to be super beneficial for you. So if you know someone else that's in that place and you think, I'm listening to this and this might help them, all I ask is that you please share it with them. That's all I ask. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to like, share, subscribe. Share it with that one person because we want that person to get value. So, Andy, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciate your time today and for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Grant.
Yeah, awesome. So, we're gonna dive into some things. I wanna give a little bit of an insight from my community on your background. I'd rather have it be your words than my words. You are a Tableau expert, and you proclaim yourself to be the Tableau expert. So tell me how you've come across to give yourself that title and why you deserve it, because I have no doubts that it's accurate.
First off, I don't think I'm an expert. I don't think there's any such thing as an expert. Because to me, an expert means you know everything, and I certainly don't know everything. I just know a lot more than everybody else. So kind of semantics there, but there's a lot I don't know. But I also know that there's a lot I don't know. So, some people call themselves experts, and I always call them out on LinkedIn and stuff, which is really fun.
I just love that.
I know they're not. But I've been using Tableau since 2007, so I'm one of their all-time longest users. And I was the first ever Tableau blogger, started the first user group, spoke at the first conference. What else? I don't know, several other things. I started the first kind of exclusive Tableau training program when I moved to London in 2015. Now I'm a member of the Data IQ 100, which basically means I'm one of the top 100 people in data around the world, which was like a super, super cool honor that I was never expecting, especially because I'm really niche in Tableau. But a lot of the stuff that I share, and maybe the reason people follow me, is that I share a lot of stuff that's outside of Tableau because it applies also to just data visualization and data analysis in general. So I've got a long career in Tableau, in data analysis, lots of really fun stories from how I got into this, what my big wins were that helped me sort of solidify that position, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and you also, I want to sell yourself short. You've established one of the most prominent data visualization YouTube channels in terms of like training on this topic, and like I think you have something over like 50,000 subscribers brought from you training on Tableau and you training on a lot of these data visualization metrics, right? Is that the majority of what your videos are about? That's correct,
yeah. And actually my colleague, his name on YouTube is Tableau Tim, and he passed me. He got the 50,000 before I did. But we do different styles of videos as well, so it's good. We both help cover us and then another lady named Sequel Bell on YouTube. Kind of the three of us have the Tableau YouTube market kind of cornered.
I love that. I love it.
I started creating YouTube videos, years ago now. I don't even remember when I created the first one. I used to write out all of the tutorials and things that I did, so it took forever to write screenshots, take screenshots, write everything. And I was like, heck with this. I'm just going to try recording one and see what happens. And until recently, they were all unedited. So if I made mistakes, those just happened because I didn't know how to do editing. I didn't want to spend the time doing it. But I took a YouTube class in last summer by Ali Abdaal, who's a
Yep.
famous YouTuber.
Love Ali.
And it was fantastic. And the best thing the number one thing I took out of that is to hire an editor. So the quality of my videos has improved a lot, but that's also then helped me focus on creating content. So I've been creating just about every week for the last, probably 8-10 years, some kind of tutorial for somebody. There's over 900 tutorials on my YouTube channel.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Yeah. Speaking of Ali, I think we trialed one of his editors, and it's funny, just like you can tell, like there's a skill set gap. Like, I think there was just one person that was like, they trialed with us, and their accolade was that they had worked with Ali Abdaal, and sometimes that means they did one video with him. Sometimes that means that they trialed with him and they didn't actually work with him, right? But they charged I think they charged like $1,200 per video or something like that, which was like some astronomical number, and the quality of it was like worse than my worst editor. It was really fun. It was like sometimes like the fact that sometimes you can work without, like, as long as you have the accolades to say I've worked with somebody, sometimes that's all you need. So on that's a tangential, but on the topic of like, first I want to hone in on this. I know some people that are starting YouTube channels, and they're really focused on, I need the quality to be amazing. I need the editing to be awesome. But something I've also noticed is I think about guys like Whiteboard Finance, which is a different niche, but he's grown to almost 1 million YouTube subscribers, and he has no editing, and it's him with a pen and a whiteboard talking about his topic, and each video gets like 1 million views, which is just incredible. I think it sounds like you've just identified that like the content of what you're talking about and the content of like how you teach and how you coach about these things is so much more important than all the additional spices that you add with the editing flavors.
Exactly. Really, the most important thing for creating YouTube content is to be consistent, because that's what feeds the algorithm.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you get discovered by the algorithm. So, if you happen to stumble across one of my videos and you even watch a second of it, you'll then get, promoted more of those. But if I only create one video every year, it's not going to get served up to anybody.
Yeah.
And what really blew me away about the class that I did with Ali is the whole idea. It was a 5-week course. The whole idea was to create one video a week to get you into the habit, which was not a problem at all for me. And you also had this team of people that could give you feedback on how you could improve the videos, lots of different things. The feedback was just incredible. And there were some people that just wouldn't produce a video. And it's like, why are you taking this course thing? You're so stupid. Like, you've got these resources that you're paying for that you're then not utilizing, and at the end of the 5 weeks, they're gone. Right?
Yeah.
You can't get that feedback from those people because they got to move on to the next cohort.
Yeah.
And people just can't get it through their head that consistency is the most important thing. Get the content out. Don't worry. People really don't care if it's edited.
Yeah.
I feel better that my content is edited because I just like the way it looks better. But I've never had feedback from people that say, oh, these are much better now because they're edited. They're not. It's the same content. It's the same style. It just looks a bit nicer. But the whole idea is to get content out there. And if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice and your audience.
And I think especially in this like side of media, which is educational, right? Like the purpose of like the viewers that are coming to this, they're coming for education. They're coming for a class. And the fact that you're providing them a class without them having to pay for it, and they're providing free resources that will help them with a specific way to do something, super beneficial. And I think those audiences are actually the best, and they're the most forgiving. Like, if you're in the entertainment side of things, or if you're trying to just react, right, then the engagement aspect of things is so much more important, and how it looks, and like almost you have to play around with dopamine so much more, and you have to think about pacing and hooks, and you have to think about like the storytelling narrative. Versus in an educational format, it's just like let me figure out the most concise way I can give this to you, and then be as blunt as possible with this information. And people appreciate it. People don't want the fluff. People don't want like they don't need it. They just want like, I just want to learn how to do this. I'm Google searching how to do this. And if I find a video from Andy that says, this is how you can do this, then I'm going to be super happy, and I'm probably going to subscribe. So I love that you've identified that. Tell me about like. I just looked it up. You did it. You started 8 years ago on YouTube, is that around the same time that you started coaching with the coaching group that you joined?
Yeah, I started a coaching group. Yeah, so I guess it must be around the same time then. Maybe that's when I ran out of time to actually write the blogs.
Yeah.
In 2015, well, let me go back a bit. So in 2007, when I first started using Tableau, I worked at Coca-Cola.
Yep.
And had some really big wins there. That's when I started blogging. The blogging got me noticed by Facebook. Facebook hired me to come run their Tableau implementation, do the training worldwide. That then led to wanting to move abroad. The two things, we just wanted to move abroad, good experience for the kids. And that's when the idea of the data school came about. I was looking for a job where I could teach all the time, and the company that I ended up working for was looking to start a training program. So the two things just happened to work out perfectly, and I knew them very well.
Yeah.
So that helps. I knew them since 2010, I believe. So I knew them for about 5 years, the kind of content they were producing, the types of people they were. So I felt very comfortable moving abroad. It still, of course, has lots of anxiety with schools and all that sort of stuff. But that's what led me to starting the data school. And the way that the data schools came about was that customers of the Information Lab, the company I went to work for, were wanting like long-term resources. They wanted consultants to come in and work 3 months, 6 months, 9 months for them. But the consulting team was very small. So if you put people out like that, your resources would be gone very quickly. Whereas the consulting team was designed to go in and do a day, 2 days, something like that, like hit lots of customers for small amounts of time. So the data school was designed to solve that problem of long-term resources.
Yep.
And my job when it started, it was very clear the division between my boss and I, the division of responsibilities, not the division between us. And
Yes.
It was very simple. He said, "You're in charge of the training. I'm in charge of anything else. If I ask you to do something training-wise, you just tell me to piss off. It's not your job." And that made it that was very useful for me and something to establish at the very beginning that I owned it. If it messed up, it was my fault.
Yeah.
If it didn't improve, it was my fault. If everybody was great, I got credit for that. So it worked really, really well that way. And what's really interesting is no two cohorts that have been through have ever had the same training, because it's constantly evolving. We get feedback from every group. The technology changes. We need to start teaching different things. Everything changes for every single cohort, which makes it really fun to teach.
Mm-hmm. What with so much knowledge that you have of Tableau, what made you hesitate to, was there ever an opportunity to work directly with the tool, to work directly with the company?
To work for Tableau?
Yeah.
Actually, I did interview with them and I didn't get the job.
Really? That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy
back
to me.
Let's see, I remember where I was for my interview. So I was living in outside of Atlanta in Ackworth, Georgia. And when I worked from home, I worked in our basement. And I remember exactly what the room looked like, where I was sitting, who I interviewed with. I thought I did great in the interview. I didn't get the job, but they told me it was because I was more valuable to them as a customer than I was as an employee.
That would piss me off.
For them, it was probably the right decision to make, because I was producing all this content for free and helping so many customers and helping grow the brand, and they were a pretty new company. But it was still really hard to take,
at least get an affiliate or something, right?
Yeah,
at least be like, give me an affiliate, give me some kind of sponsorship deal.
Yeah. It was really, I guess it was disheartening at first until I found out the reasons why. But that's okay. Life has its ups and downs, and if I got that job, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, tell me a bit about your experience at Facebook. I'm very curious. I've known some people. Some of my friends have worked at Facebook. There's been people that have had amazing experiences. People have had negative experiences. What was your time there like?
So I went there initially to run the Tableau implementation, and I had sort of full reign, like kind of like I did at the data school, to do it the way that I saw fit, which was great. I had a lot of freedom. I loved working there because everybody was so smart.
Yeah.
I always felt like the dumbest person in the room. You know, and I don't know who said the expression of, you know, if you're the smartest person in a room, you're in the wrong room. I don't know.
Yep.
I know I've heard it before. I don't even know if that's right, but it's something like
It is
that.
real. Yep.
And so it was really fun to teach people that were really smart and could pick up on things really quickly.
Yeah.
I loved working there. I loved the environment. I loved the mission of the company. It was super interesting to hear Mark Zuckerberg speak at a Q&A every Friday in the lunchroom. You know, just his vision, and he gets a really bad rep, I think, for or bad rap. Sorry, a bad rap for some of the things that Facebook does, but I don't think that's really. It's not him. It's just kind of the nature of becoming this gigantic behemoth of a company, I think.
Yeah.
So
To set the standard in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that and not be criticized.
Exactly. I started there in 2012, so I signed my contract pre-IPO, which was nice.
Nice.
And there were less than 1,000 employees, I believe, when I started. And there were and then I left 3 years later, and there were about, I don't know, 10 or 15,000 employees. So the growth was crazy, but the culture of the company never changed. I ended up getting a guy that I worked with. He was in a different department. He convinced me to kind of move over to their team. And I had all the support of the person I was working for already, and they knew each other and everything. And my boss over there was absolutely fantastic. But then he left the company, and I was given to, basically I ended up reporting to his boss.
Yeah.
Who it didn't go well. It really put a sour taste in my mouth. It was completely different than any other way I've been treated since I was there.
Yeah.
So, you know, and inevitably you're like, you know, do I belong here? Is this the right place for me? All those sorts of things. So I fortunately, I was able to go back to my old boss and say, hey, can I come back to your team? If I don't, I'm going to leave. And he said, yeah, I'll work it out. So I went back to his team. Didn't have any plans to actually leave, but situations, you know, I came over and spoke at the Tableau conference in London in 2014. That's when we kind of decided, hey, let's have an experience abroad. That's what led me to contacting the information lab, and those things sort of all fell together. So overall, I had an amazing experience at Facebook, other than one manager that made me feel like I really didn't belong there.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. And let's dive into this, because I think something that's really interesting about this role that you've had is that it's also allowed you to establish your own personal brand, which is unique. Most of the time, when you're dealing with something in the training element, or when you're dealing with like a specific, like even if your job is to train people, most of that kind of is seen as like proprietary, and we're like, we want to keep this in-house. We want to have it be our own kind of like intellectual property within the company. But over the last 8 years, what you've been able to do is, as you've built their program and their brand and their product, right, you've also established yourself even more so with your own content. You've grown your LinkedIn, you've grown your blog, you've grown your YouTube. So talk to me about that. Why? Because it's, in my mind, that's why my perception of you has been like you've been an entrepreneur for a decade, right? So it's like, that's my perception. But why, like, from your perspective, what has it felt like? Because you've established yourself as your own unique brand in conjunction with another company.
Right. So, like I mentioned earlier, I started the brand building kind of early on, but I didn't know like what a personal brand was at the time. I was just writing down what I learned, and it just happened to be that people read it, and I didn't know it was early in the evolution of Tableau and that sort of thing. But when I moved to the information lab, one of the reasons they hired me was because of my network and because of my brand.
Love that.
I wouldn't have gotten that job if I didn't have the expertise that I had built, and the following that I had. So when people, that's what attracts people to apply to the data school. I know it sounds a bit arrogant, but I get a lot of feedback when we interview people that, hey, without your YouTube channel, I wouldn't be sitting here, interviewing today. So the company leveraged my name because it had the credibility behind it. So it's like, okay, Andy has been around for a long time, clearly knows what he's doing, puts out all this content. He's the one that's going to be creating all these great data analysts. And so the company was really smart leveraging that, and they allowed me to keep building that along the way. So anything I do for my personal brand is perfectly okay to do on company time, because ultimately it benefits the company because the two are related to each other and people know that.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's probably easier to sell you versus selling the company. Like, you probably get more traction on your content than if the company were to put out a post, even if it's an identical post. It'd be more relevant coming from you and your voice because you have so much there's so much more context into who you are as a person that makes whatever your opinion is more valid, right?
Yeah, totally. The company definitely leverages my name in that, and we get opportunities directly from people that message me directly on LinkedIn that turn into customers of ours.
Yeah.
So if I wasn't doing that, those people probably wouldn't be following me, which means they wouldn't know about the data school, which means they wouldn't be hiring somebody, right? So it's this sort of string of events. But that all comes back to the company allowing me the freedom to build that brand.
Yeah. That's such a rare thing. So when I think about your career path and what you've established and where you're headed, I hear a lot of people that are probably going to feel like they can relate to you in the sense that they have become an expert. And I'm going to reframe the word expert. They become a Hall of Famer.
Very good.
A Hall of Famer in whatever category that is, whether it's in data, whether it's in IT, there's so many different caveats where they've established themselves within their own corporate environments and within their own career as, I am really good at this. And what they don't have vision for is how to not just do that for a company. A lot of times they've been growing whatever that is, and then every 5-7 years they bounce from one company to the next company, doing that same thing, implementing it the same way, establishing the same teams, and then they kind of get bored, and then they move on to the next company and do the same thing. What would you say to people that have established themselves as experts? Where should they be thinking long term? Say they're not putting out content, right? So like, I'm sure you can give us that, just say like, hey, just start. But like, they're not putting out content, right? And they don't have an idea of how they can build an asset with their own knowledge that will allow them to grow something long term.
Right. So there are a lot of people that do that bouncing from job to job, doing the same thing here and there, but you're not learning anything if you're doing that. You're just repeating the same cycle. And it's like, of course you're going to get bored. You're not learning anything new. So that's the first thing, is you have to keep learning. If you're not being really deliberate about your learning, about creating content, you're doing yourself a disservice. I create content because it helps reinforce the things I learn. It helps me share with other people so that they know that I'm a resource that they can trust. And as far as what they should be looking for, I think they need to really evaluate what it is that they really want out of their career. Surely they don't want to be, if they're bouncing from job to job, they're probably just doing it because they're getting a raise. Each company, I'm sure they're building up a reputation along the way for, hey, helps get this up and running. Oh, it did it here as well, and they're getting, nice little logos on their CV. But I would be pretty skeptical of hiring somebody like that because I'm not seeing really a progression in their work. I'm seeing a progression in their salary, but not a progression in their work. So if you're not continuing to learn, you're doing yourself a disservice, and ultimately you're probably not going to be very happy with what you do. If you are happy with what you do, you're not going to have to worry about the money. The money's going to come because you're going to perform better. Yeah.
I love that. And so then on the flip side of things, talk to someone that's probably starting out in their career. And for them, it's like, someone coming out of college and they might have specialized in something, or they've decided, at least I'm going to start my career in this one way, whether it's business, whether it's as a developer, whatever that is. Why should someone? I think I know your argument, but do you think someone should seek to become an expert at something for a company?
I think initially when you're starting your career, the answer is no,
Okay.
because you need to try lots of different things. You don't want to pigeon your hole too quickly. It took me a very long time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm glad that I tried all of those other things along the way, because I wouldn't have figured out what I wanted to do.
Yes.
So I would recommend against that.
When is it an appropriate time? Do you think that the like other people affirming you, saying like, I'm guessing, Andy, that you had people saying like, Andy, you're really good at Tableau, like during that beginning stages, like, was that the affirmation you needed to be like, yeah, I can actually probably do something with this?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I was just doing it because I enjoyed it. I was having lots of fun. I enjoyed creating content. I was learning all the time. And I didn't know that I was getting better. I didn't know that I was becoming one of the best at this stuff, right? I was just doing, and I was just learning. And then people were like, you know what, you're really, really good at this. You should maybe focus on this. So it was the encouragement of other people that did that.
What's the difference between someone who's really good at something and someone who's good at potentially teaching it? You've done both.
Very different things. Teaching is significantly harder than knowing it. You actually, I don't know, there's another person that says, you learn more by teaching than you do by doing. And I know that works for me. Every time I teach, I learn something new. The great thing about teaching is you have to know 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 different ways, whatever, to explain the same topic. And that's really going to build up your reserves, and it's going to make it much easier to communicate across a broad audience. So if I needed, for example, to go teach a public class, we do cohorts of 8 at the data school. But if I needed to go teach a public class, I would have enough information in my toolkit to be able to explain the topics to every person in that room. I mean, I am confident of that. But if I didn't teach all the time, I wouldn't learn those skills. Yeah. It's really about communication. You need to understand your audience. You need to know how to communicate with them. And you need to have that set of conversations or ways of explaining things that you don't get when you're just trying to understand something.
Did you teach before or after you managed a team doing this? So like, what was your context first? Were you teaching just creating content, teaching in terms of like I was writing a blog about it, or did you jump into teaching and everything kind of happened at the same time?
I was teaching through the blog without knowing it. So that was a good accident.
Yeah.
My first job as like an actual trainer was when I went to Facebook. And that's when I had to start building out formal curriculums. And like all this stuff is in my head. I really don't need a curriculum, but other people need it, right? And that's when, I really realized my passion for doing the teaching and the training. So that then led to the data school and doing training there, writing the curriculums. But I don't think I answered your question.
No, yes, you did. So in the sense that like you're saying that you were accidentally starting to teach just by creating the content. And then at Facebook is when you really, because you were managing a team and creating curriculums, that's where the coaching aspect of this really started to take form.
I wasn't actually managing a team. And I still don't manage it. I don't manage a team now, even though
awesome.
I lead a team, but I don't manage.
Explain that.
Wait, I don't manage a team. I lead a team. I don't want to be a people manager. I've done it and I don't like it. It's not for me. I love mentoring people and guiding people, but I don't like managing people. I think it's a skill I don't like and I don't want to develop. I won't dedicate time to it. But leading people and mentoring them is a very different thing. Like I love doing one-on-ones with people, but I never do them. I refuse to do them in the office. I refuse to do one-on-ones in the office. I always go for a walk because it becomes much more of a conversation. I learned that at Facebook. That's how they do their one-on-ones. They encourage you to have walking one-on-ones. Of course, the weather's always nice there, so that helps. Yeah. But in London, the weather's not always nice, but that's okay. I learned a lot about like kind of the city of London, the kind of center of London, about a lot of the history and things. So I would take people on a walking tour and I would tell them some things some really obscure things I'm sure they didn't know. But then we would have a conversation about work and how are they doing and how can I help them and where do they want to go and all the advice and those sorts of things. So I think of that more as mentoring than
Yeah.
it is.
So
that's
let me-
coaching, I guess. That's
let
where
me-
the coaching
let me ask-
aspect of my job.
Let me ask a clarifying question for me. When you say you don't like managing people, it sounds like you've had people under you. Like
Yes.
there's people that are your direct reports. But in terms of how you communicate with them and the way you lead them, you don't like the idea of I'm managing you. I'm your manager. You'd rather think I'm your mentor helping you in your own journey.
The company at the Information Lab, while I am the head coach or the global head coach, and there are head coaches at the regions, and then there's coaches as well, there's kind of an implicit hierarchy,
Yeah.
but not an explicit hierarchy. Nobody manages anybody in our company except for the director. He's the only
Gotcha.
person that has reports.
Gotcha.
So I guide the team and I lead the team, but I don't manage them. And we
I
don't
love
have
that.
performance reviews. We don't have performance reviews at our company.
Okay. Well, so then I want to, because I'm very curious about that too. Do you see that as a positive thing or a negative thing?
I think it's a positive thing because, well, first off, companies waste so much time and money doing performance reviews.
They do.
And if you need a performance review, then your boss is doing a terrible job. So, I've been in performance reviews before and I get surprises in there. It's
Yeah.
like, you should never be surprised in a performance review. If you are, then you've got a terrible manager. Anytime I encourage the coaches that work on my team that as soon as you get feedback about somebody, give it to them then. Worst case, give it to them the next morning, because then you can give them the very specific situation that was going on that they need to improve upon or that they did really well. So it's not, a lot of times feedback is only negative, but I encourage them to give all the positive feedback as well, because you want to build up confidence, right? A lot of these people are new at data analysis, and we need to build up their confidence that way.
Yeah.
But we also have very high expectations. So, I don't really. I was trying to think if I had any more to say.
No, I kind of love that. I think it's hard. I think performance reviews are hard to not do at scale. I think if you have a small, intimate team and you hired correctly, it's like
I disagree.
You disagree? Tell me about it. Why do you disagree? Because I think like
because it's trust. It's trust. Why do you let somebody manage people if you don't trust them to evaluate them? And why does their manager not get trusted to manage the managers? It's all trust.
Don't you think trust is earned?
It is, but why would somebody get put in that position if they haven't gained that trust? If they're a manager and they don't have the trust of people that put them in that position, then they shouldn't be in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
So you hire people to do work that you don't want to do or that they can do better, right? Or, to get things off your plate, whatever it might be. That's usually the reason that somebody is brought on. But you have to you have to trust that person to do their job. And, you get feedback along the way about how if you were a manager under me, I would get feedback from whoever works for you on how you're doing. I would give you that feedback, or your peers, whatever it might be. Right. And that's how we build up trust. But I have to trust you that you can give an honest appraisal of how your people are doing, and honestly think about, well, what is the value of this person to our company?
Yeah. I guess I'm caught up in the semantics of it, because in my mind I think like I've benefited from performance reviews and I see the purpose of them. I also would love to be in an environment. I've worked in a bunch of different corporate environments, usually for bigger companies, and so therefore all of them have some kind of performance review thing. And I've enjoyed the process. I also see the purpose of it, because there's some people that need motivation. There's some people where their approach to work is, let me do as little as possible to get paid as much as possible, right? But
isn't that your fault as a manager? If they get to that point, then that's your fault. That's not their fault.
Or you've hired incorrectly. But that's sometimes what's happened. That's sometimes what's happened is usually people at a large company, you think I need to get all these employees to do all these different functions when you should be leaner for a longer period of time. And when you're leaner for a longer period of time, you can spend more money on the right people. But sometimes when companies get bloated, right, they think about how can we expand, and expansion becomes the priority. and you end up bringing on a lot of people that don't actually fit the culture that you're looking to grow. So
Yep.
that's why when I say like I see the benefit of performance reviews at larger scales, I'm like, okay, yeah, because I've been in environments where the majority of people that I work with are not as motivated as me. They're not as driven
Right.
as me. So that's because of that. I'm like, yep, I don't need a manager to tell me work hard, because I'm going to get there and I'm going to work hard because that's what that's what I want to do. So to that extent, like I see the benefit of it, but to what you're talking about, I think I agree 100%, where it's like, if you need to be told where you need to grow in those contexts, you're doing something wrong. I want to transition. I like that. I like this topic, but I want to transition to
I could argue with you about this forever.
I'm sure we could. Yeah, I'd be down. I'd be down to do a whole podcast.
Discuss,
on
not
that.
argue. Discuss. Yeah.
I want to transition though, because I want to know. Here's what my podcast specifically targets. Right, it's to help entrepreneurs, people that have been wanting to do something for themselves, whether they desire the monetary benefit or the time freedom or the locational flexibility. You've explored a bunch of these different things. So I want to start by asking you questions of, first off, where's your favorite place that you've lived? You've lived in a few different places. You've lived in California, Atlanta, now London. Where's your favorite place you've lived?
Wow. Well, I grew up in Philadelphia. Where?
Where in Philly?
Plymouth Meeting.
Really? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I grew up in Westchester. So that's about 20 minutes away. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got
That's
a really
awesome.
funny story. If you don't mind a little sidetrack here. I went to visit the data school in Australia back in, this is a kind of a small world sort of story.
Yeah.
And one of the women that went through the data school there, I was having a chat with her, and she lived in America, but she wasn't allowed to work because she was there. She was of Indian descent. So her husband had a visa. So she was just, on a spousal visa. And we got to talking about where she lived and stuff. And she's like, oh, I lived outside Philadelphia. I'm like, oh, where'd you live? She's like, have you heard of Plymouth Meeting? I'm like, yeah. She lived 2 blocks from my house, and her kids went to the same school as mine. I'm like,
crazy.
I'm halfway around the world. I mean, it was like totally blew my mind. Anyway.
That's awesome.
So my favorite place to live, that's a tough one. I didn't really care for the Atlanta area that much because it was too much like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. It wasn't as bad in California.
Really?
No.
That's surprising.
No, I didn't think so. The weather in California is just incredible. I really, really miss the weather.
Yeah, I'm sure in the UK, I'm sure you're feeling that right now.
Yeah. I like to tell people I moved here for the weather. But I loved living in London. I don't live in London anymore. I lived there for 8 years and loved how multicultural it is. But I got tired of the busyness. Mm-hmm. And probably where I live now is my favorite place because, it's relaxing. It's only 3 hours on train to London. Newcastle isn't far away if you need to go to a city. The people are super friendly. Everybody's relaxed. I get to work from home. I look out my window now. I'm looking at a farm. So it's
awesome.
Just super, super relaxing. It's made a really big difference to my mental health as well. I do miss being able to walk to a coffee shop when you feel like it and get out of the house. But we lived under the Heathrow flight path, which wasn't great. Okay. So moving out here, it was actually, at first it was really hard because it was so quiet and so dark.
Yeah.
And you get woken up by the roosters across the farm, which was like, you're certainly not going to hear that. You might hear the
Wi-Fi?
scream,
How's the Wi-Fi out there? That sounds pretty remote.
Well, I mean, Wi-Fi is Wi-Fi. It's more of how's the internet.
Yeah.
We actually do struggle a bit with the Wi-Fi in our house, though, because it's from the 1860s. It's an old cottage. And the walls are so thick that you have to almost have a Wi-Fi router in every room.
Yep.
Because it just doesn't go around the house. So
that's awesome.
And of course, when my kids come visit, they all complain about that.
Yep. Of course. Well, so and I have to ask, what soccer team do you support? What football team?
Arsenal.
Arsenal. It's been you're coming back, right? Isn't Arsenal like getting okay? They're on the
they're a point behind Man City.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. It's a good time to be an Arsenal fan.
But I'm only an Arsenal fan because my oldest son, when he started playing soccer, all of the teams in the youth soccer league, he was I think 4 at the time, were all named after Premier League teams, and his team was Arsenal.
Yep. Yes, you just got used to it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. So talk to me. So like you first were like, I want to relocate and I want to go to Europe. What was that transition like with you and your family? What was that like communication like? Because that type of desire for such an extreme relocation, I guess because the company was there, it felt a little bit different. But at the same time, like that's such a drastic change from environments. What led to that being the change, and why were you like, yeah, I want to go find a company out there to live in that kind of location?
Right. Well, back in 2004, I worked for a consulting company, and I went to Vietnam 3 times and really wanted to move there, which is even, crazier to think about.
Yeah,
I had learned to speak Vietnamese. The people were very nice. Unfortunately, the director that was in the process of moving me there had a sudden heart attack and passed away.
Oh, no.
So then the whole thing kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what started the desire between me and my now ex to move abroad. She came with me to the Tableau conference in 2014. And well, if I go back a bit, she was very hesitant to leave Atlanta and move to California because that's where all her friends were. That's where her family was.
Yep.
So, it's always hard moving somewhere new. And she came with me to the Tableau conference in 2014 in London, and she has a history degree. It was perfect weather. And on the way home, we were like, maybe this is a place we should move. And that's when I got in touch with the folks from the information lab. It would have been it would have been much more difficult if I didn't already have a base of people that I knew.
Yeah.
Starting from scratch would be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have done it if I didn't have that base of people.
Yeah.
It's hard to know if I would have done it or not, but that was a big factor in it is being able, for me at least, to settle really quickly. It was much more difficult for my ex because English people tend to not want to get close to people that are expats because they might leave. And fortunately, there's a really large expat community once you find it. So once she found that, she was fine. We didn't tell the kids until shortly before we moved. We told them we had to get them passports because we were going away.
Yeah.
So so at the end of the school year in 2000 and when did they move? 2015. So kind of before the end of the school year, we told them what was going on, and they were, of course, very upset about it. But they, kids are very resilient. In the long run, it's going to be an experience that they will benefit from in their lives. They don't probably know it yet.
Yeah.
They all have permanent residence here, so if they ever want to live here, they can. My youngest son and we're now citizens. I have twins. My twin son my son that's a twin, he goes to university in the Netherlands. His sister went back to the U.S. and goes to school in Tennessee. Their
Awesome.
older brother lives in Atlanta. So everybody's kind of spread out everywhere, and they're okay with that. But I think that's because we've lived in places that, we've lived far away from people. They've had to make new friends. Yeah, but just living so close to Europe is just an amazing experience. It's really cheap to travel. You're an hour flight from so many places. Yep. And so we tried to make the most of that experience as well.
I love that. Make me think a little bit.
Do it.
I want to ask you, because this is fundamentally where I think you have the most to offer. For my community, and just in terms of your experience and your background. I'm not asking you any technical questions because I'm sure you've done podcasts and interviews where people who want to hear that can go listen and find so many beneficial resources that you've already done. I want to ask on a more broad level, for someone that's in your position, someone that's established themselves as a coach, as a Hall of Famer in the category, in a field. What does entrepreneurship look like? What is going out on your own look like? What is establishing your own company and helping people by yourself look like?
Yeah, so if anybody listening to this knows me, then this is a spoiler. But I am leaving my company after 8.5 years at the Information Lab and going out on my own. There were a few reasons for that. I blame my boss because he has very generous paternity leave. So I have a 4-month-old, and I got 3 months of paid paternity leave.
Awesome.
And with my first 4 kids, I didn't get any. I lived in America, so I got 0. So I got to see a lot that I never got to experience before. I also felt like I was at a point in my career where I didn't really have much left to do at the company, if that makes sense. I kind of, everything's running smooth now. I'm not learning much anymore. I want a new challenge. Nothing against the company. The company's great. My boss is great. He was fantastic when I told him. He's really supportive of me and everything. So for me, the reasons for going out on my own are spend more time with my family, spend less time working, and continue to learn and to do something new.
What do you envision that is? Do you think is it going to be specific to this field still? Or are you going to probably do consulting by yourself?
Yeah, I won't do individual consulting because I don't really enjoy consulting.
Okay.
And it doesn't scale very well either because you have a fixed number of hours that you can do. So I'm going to be coming up with a couple of different streams that I'll just kind of see which ones work. One is going to be continuing to do the kind of training that I do now, but do it for companies. But I can scale that a lot more. I can train a lot more people at one time. There's still lots and lots of need for this type of training. So people buy a lot of licenses, but nobody knows how to use it. So there's a big market there. But again, that only scales to a certain level because I only want to work 3 days a week. So whether I'm going to actually be able to do that or not at the beginning is, I think the answer is no, but I'm going to do my best. And so that's one thing. The other one is I might do one-on-one training. It'll be probably really expensive, but if people want that, then I could offer that. I'm going to create video courses. I'm going to also offer, I guess it's kind of like consulting services, but where I can come in and do
like an audit?
Evaluations.
Yeah.
Say again?
Like an audit.
Yeah, kind of like an audit. Yeah, I can go in and evaluate their talent and let them know what levels people are at, and maybe develop training plans for people, individual training plans, but on behalf of a company. Yeah. And also maybe come in and give them feedback on work they're doing. So not how to do what they're doing, but more feedback on, okay, this is the way that you could communicate this information better to your stakeholders. What's the question they're really trying to? So kind of giving an outsider's perspective on what might communicate well. So there's a couple different things I'm gonna offer up there. We'll see how it goes.
How templative is it? Because I'm sure there's things where there's so many ways to visualize specific things depending on what people are trying to understand. But from your perspective, do you have your this is my favorite way to do this? This is I think this is the best way to create, if you want to create this type of reporting, this is my preferred way to connect these.
Well, I'm going to give you the classic consultant answer, and it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the question that the stakeholder wants answered. And then you have to start with that. So start with why, like Simon Sinek, and then figure out, what data do you have, right? So they might have a question, but you might not have the data to answer that. And then based on the data that you have, what is possible? And then based on what is possible, what is most useful? Based on what's useful, what communicates clearest? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Something that I hope people take away from this conversation is the asset that continual learning is. You've continually learned and established, you started with affirmation from your project management role, right? And you took that and then you went to Coca-Cola and you established new things and probably got more affirmation in this particular subject, where you said, okay, I really enjoy learning about this. I'm just going to continue to learn about this on my own time or through the company means that's appropriate. And then you've you've taken on and realized that there's a gap of knowledge that other people don't have that comes naturally to you. Some people call it like that like zone of genius. But when it's specific to a topic, that's such an asset that you've monetized one way or another over your entire career. You've monetized it in terms of being able to get yourself in rooms, being able to get yourself indoors, being able to get yourself interviews. So much so that even you've said, Tableau said, I don't want you to work with us because because you're more valuable as a customer, which just speaks to the monetization. Like you've made Tableau millions of dollars, I'm sure, and as a result, like you've benefited so many companies. What do you think? Do you think more people should take this route? Do you think more people should look beyond their 9-to-5 and their function and seek to make productized or seek to coach on this, seek to consult on this, seek to teach others, or at least just for a free way help others with the knowledge of whatever they're learning? Do you think that more people should be doing that?
I think more people should definitely be giving away stuff for free.
Yeah.
Because it's going to help you more than it helps them, for sure. It helps with your communication. It helps you learn. There's so many benefits to teaching other people. But I also think that going out on your own is not for everybody. Really going into your niche is not for everybody. Some people just aren't driven. And, I don't want to encourage somebody to go out on their own if they don't have the ambition to do it.
Yeah.
So it's all, I'm a very, very driven person. I always have goals that I want to hit, whether it's, work related or learning or, some type of physical achievement, like an Ironman or whatever it might be. I'm a very goals driven person, and a lot of people aren't like that.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to go out on your own, you probably have to be like that. I think everybody in the coaching group that we're in is like that. I can't imagine anybody in that group isn't extremely driven.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to have that drive and that ambition. And some people don't care to really learn one topic in particular. They just want to go and pick up a paycheck.
Yeah.
And the world needs people like that.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think I want to ask kind of like because so far you've done everything almost like as an entrepreneur, right? You've established things within other companies. And yes, you've owned things, you've led things, you've had freedom that most business owners would have when they say, here's my directive, this is what I want to do. And that's just because you've found the right environments that appreciate your skill set and what you bring to the table. What about that? Do you think a lot of people should seek that? Because I think everyone should either be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. If someone, like intrapreneurs are in the sense that like you're going to be passionate about what you want to do, but you want to do it for somebody else.
I've never heard that term intrapreneur before, but I guess when you're an intrapreneur, somebody else is making money off of you.
Yeah. Yes.
So while I am getting the freedom to build my own brand, I'm not the one that actually benefits from that. The company is.
Yeah.
So that's maybe that's why I should be an entrepreneur. I can't even imagine the millions that I've made for Tableau and for our company.
Yeah.
Like if the data school didn't exist, that's a lot of money that the company wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I'd never heard that before. That's really interesting. Again, I think some people don't care to be recognized like that. But if you do have that ambition and you do want to get noticed and you do want to gain that trust of others to be able to pursue your passions, you have to demonstrate those skills. You have to share those skills, whether it's internally or externally, and start building up that expertise and that reputation. So, if it is internal, you don't care for people outside the company to know who you are. That's fine, but build your brand inside the company. Mm-hmm. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think there's only two reasons to build a brand, right? It's either ego, which is wrong, or marketing. And I think marketing can be for a positive reason, even if it's just to show evidence. And I think we're reaching an age where, despite economic volatility, having evidence of your expertise is extremely valuable. So much so that like Andy, like no matter where the world goes, there's someone that's going to need an Andy because
Right.
you've built up all this evidence, not on a resume, but through years. Like you can send, here's my YouTube channel, here's my LinkedIn, here's my blog, here's keynote speeches that I've done, here's how much money I've made for these 2 different companies, these 4 different companies. There's evidence that you have showcased broadly of what you've accomplished. And that's not ego. That's just saying, hey, I want to help people. And this is evidence that I've done my job, which is to help people. And I think I would argue that, not everybody should do everything in public if your goal is ego, if your goal is notoriety, if your goal is I just want to build myself. But if your goal is I want to help people and I want to show evidence, not just on my resume, that I'm really good at what I do and that I can help other people be really good at what they want to do, I think that's really powerful. And I think over time, like I look at your profile and I look at I see, everything that you've done, I see long-term, like it is, no one can take that away from you. Platforms can get shut down. YouTube can get shut down and you still have these other platforms that show it. LinkedIn can get shut down. You have these other, like Tableau could get shut down. And I'm sure that your knowledge of it is going to be transferable to something else.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's, I guess when I'm hoping that people listen to this, takeaway is that the sooner you start building that evidence, it could be as simple as recording that video and not editing it and not scripting it, but just recording that video and what you know and you talk about, and you do something consistently. 8 years of consistency can lead to this level of evidence that might allow you, if you want to explore it, to have time freedom, meaning working 3 days a week, and to have the ability to make money on your own terms for yourself, where you're making money for yourself using your own assets that you've built versus making other people money for, like something I heard once was you'll never make more money than your boss. You'll never have the same house that your boss has. I love that because some people are not going to be fired up about it. Some people are not going to have like negative, they're not going to have ambition, kind of like what you're saying, to drive themselves to entrepreneurship. And you're right, it's not for everybody, but I do think that we're approaching an age where evidence is a necessity for everybody. And the people that build themselves as an asset with their knowledge and with their expertise will ultimately have more success because they'll be seen by more people, be known by more people, and have more opportunities just with that. Whether they want to do something intrapreneurial or entrepreneurial, they'll have more opportunities because they do their learning and do their growth in public, which is all you've done fundamentally. If you're saying all I've done is learn in my teaching, all I've done is like I've taught other people and I learned more and more, I've adapted more and more, I've received the feedback. All of that is public, which is so cool. And so anybody that wants to learn what you've done and wants to achieve similar things, they can look through your 8 years of content and see the evolution of all that you've learned and all that you've grown in. And that's super valuable. So first, I just want to say thank you for doing that, and thank you for giving so much free value away, because now that you're able to monetize it, I think the dividends of what that compounding deposit does is going to pay back so much more, and it's going to give you the life that you're really looking to pursue. And I'm really proud of you. I think a lot of people don't do what you've done, and to be honest, I think what you've done is the way that a lot of people should do it, which is do things that are really impressive for a really long time for other people, and then when you don't need the money, but you can get it, when you don't need to build wealth, but you can, you then say, nope, I want flexibility, and you choose the lifestyle that you want, given all the stuff that you've built. I think it's incredible, and I think that's so much better than thinking about retirement, so much better than thinking about all these other things. It's like, how can I just do what I love on my own terms and for the people I want to do it for? So really, really impressive. Andy, thanks for spending time with me. If there's, can you please plug something? Where can people find you? If people want to work with you, if people want to talk to you, if people want to learn from you, where can people find you?
Yeah. I can send you a couple of links that maybe you could put in the show notes. But the
100%.
best thing people can do is probably just go to andykriebel.com. So you can just register for my newsletter there. That's going to end up becoming my website for my business. But if you sign up to the newsletter, you're going to be the first one to know what's going on. I share exclusive content to my newsletter as well. I do career advice, all different kinds of topics, links to live streams that I do. I try to basically sort of curate all the content I'm putting out for people into a newsletter.
Love it.
And so that's the best way. If you go to andykriebel.com, just pop your email in there. You get a free ebook when you sign up. And you can be the first to find out what's going to happen next.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thanks so much for spending time with me. Please go do that, everybody. And as always, send this to one person. If they can be benefited from this conversation, if they want to learn from Andy, if they want to learn from Andy's experience, send it to them, because I think this is super valuable, and I really appreciate Andy. I appreciate your time. So thanks, everybody. Have a great one.